We are going in depth on two big stories tonight. First up is the case of death row inmate Richard Glossip. The U.S. Supreme Court threw out Glossip's conviction this morning in a ruling we were not expecting to come out until June. And Attorney General Gentner Drummond says the case will be settled once and for all by the end of the year. A ruling that wasn't expected until June came down Tuesday from the U.S. Supreme Court. The court ruled Oklahoma death row inmate Richard Glossip's two previous murder trials were flawed and violated his rights.
I do not believe that Richard Glossip is innocent. I believe him to be guilty, but I believe him to not have been given a fair trial.
Oklahoma Attorney General Gentner Drummond fought for a new trial and says Glossip is guilty of a crime, just not a crime worthy of death, something that will now be sorted out all over again in a new trial.
I believe that Mr. Glossip, by his own testimony, is guilty of accessory after the fact. So we know that he, by his own words, is guilty of a 35-year crime.
The majority of the court ruled that during Glossip's trial, valuable evidence was withheld that could help him in his defense, and false statements made on the stand by the state's star witness were never corrected and influenced the jury. Something Glossip and his attorneys have argued for years, but felt the state was willfully ignoring them to protect the prosecutors.
So every single person who's out there in Oklahoma has to recognize that if they can do this, if they could execute Rich, what's next?
In a new statement, Glossip's lead attorney Don Knight called the ruling, quote, a victory for justice and fairness in our judicial system. Glossip's wife, Leah, who has previously spoken with Fox 23, also said in a statement, quote, Rich and I opened the decision together on the phone this morning, knowing it would be a life-changing moment. To say we are overcome with emotion is an understatement. We are deeply grateful. Today is truly an answered prayer. Drummond says a new trial can and will happen by the end of the year. Now the state and Oklahoma County must determine what crime does the evidence show. Has time tainted the possibility of a conviction? And is it possible, when credit for time served is factored in, that Glossip could be a free man soon? The biggest issue the majority of the court took issue with is something we've explained on our in-depth segment before. It is something called Box 8. There were multiple boxes of evidence, you can see some of them on your screen, that were not known to Glossip's attorney during both of his trials that could be used for his defense. They included scribbled notes that seemed to indicate that the primary witness, Justin Sneed, was medicated on lithium and his testimony was inaccurate and never corrected, as well as Sneed's own meth addiction. Box 8 was not known until the public until early 2023, after Drummond himself ordered the box to be released to Glossip's attorney. On the other side of this is murder victim Barry Van Treese's family, who has called this entire ordeal disgusting and says it robs them of closure. They found sympathy with Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, who had expressed last fall the family deserved justice and closure, and the prosecutors in the case were being smeared after the fact. Here is some of what Thomas said about the prosecutors.
And they're saying, look, it did not happen. And why wouldn't they be interviewed? Why don't we have materials from them other than in an amicus brief in this case?
Well, with respect, Justice Thomas, you do have materials from them. Ackley's affidavit is in the joint appendix before this court. And it's not like Smotherman never talked to anybody. She's talked to people at various junctures, and her story has changed over time. Again, I don't want to overstate the point because we didn't resist an evidentiary
But
hearing.
they are central to this. It would seem like any dealings with them would also be central, and we would not be arguing about NAPU and Brady if that had been cleared up.
The Attorney General vowed to get this entire thing wrapped up one way or another before the end of this year. So here is what is happening next, even right now. Richard Glossip will be held in the Department of Corrections custody, but he will be moved out of the maximum security block at the state pen in McAllister while this plays out. Drummond and Oklahoma County District Attorney Vicki Bahena will meet to discuss what charges they want to move forward on. But based off Drummond's comments, it appears they will not seek the death penalty. Drummond will not prosecute the prosecutors, the Supreme Court says, committed misconduct during Glossip's two previous trials.